Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
So hello and welcome to a very special episode that we are recording with Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain. For the second time we're having him on the show. He's the former GOC of Srinagar Base 15 Corps and right now the Chancellor of the Central University of Kashmir. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and being on the show.
Thank you.
So at first, thank you so much for the service. And we're seeing your article that you mentioned on the targets on the minorities. So my first question would be, if you could give a brief scenario for all those people who are watching this, have not followed the news, if you could just summarize a little bit of what's happening, and then I'll focus my question based on the article that you have written.
So you would like me to
a
give
little
you
bit
a little background?
Yeah, the 6 killings that have happened.
Right.
In fact, 7 if I'm not wrong.
7 actually, and I'm told that there are 5 of them who are minorities. 2 were from the Muslim community there. Now, you see, it harks back to 1990, the 19th of January. It happened then. A lot of people think that that was the only time it happened and it didn't happen thereafter. It's only happening now. That's not correct. It's happened at different intervals. And I, in my article, also wrote out some of the landmark milestones which occurred in the middle. Chitti Singhpura was one of them, where Sikh minorities, 36 of them were gunned down in March of 2000. We had Vandhama, and we also had Nandi Marg, 2 milestones in which a large number of Kashmiri Pandit minorities were also gunned down. This was usually a system in the valley in the last 30 years that when a terrorist group wanted to show or establish its dominance in an area and project its dominance, it carried out a major terrorist criminal act. This is a typical criminal act, right? A terrorist criminal act. And this is how these actions happened at that particular time. Now, Kashmiri Pandits, Kashmiri Hindus, there are others also. There are Kashmiri Rajputs also. They live in different parts of the valley. There are approximately 800 of them who did not leave the valley. 800 families who did not leave the valley. They live in different pockets, a large number of them in Srinagar. It may not be possible to physically secure every single person going to work, coming back from work, living at home, traveling and things like that. There are a very large number of Sikhs also. They live in clusters. Sikhs normally live in clusters. It's a little easier to secure the Sikhs comparatively. Now, having said all this, it's important for your audience to know that what was the reason this happened in January of 1990 and what is the reason why it's happening now? The reasons are almost similar. The reason why it happened was Pakistan had decided as a part of its grand strategy that allowing the minorities to function, remain in Kashmir, meant that the typical Sufi tolerance, the Kashmiri traditional middle path ideology would continue. And that is too close to India's very secular ideology too. Our political ideology, our constitutional ideology, everything is all about tolerance. And this was not a part of Pakistan's game. They wanted it to change. They wanted the valley to change to a more obscurantist kind of thinking. And this is what they attempted. They attempted this, a start point with this attempted Holocaust, and hoping that the valley would be cleaned out. There would be ethnic cleansing and cleaning out of all the minorities from here. It didn't happen completely. Now, why are they doing it now? Because from Afghanistan, it's not as if the Taliban has given orders or something like that. This is all being misled. It is just that the flames of political Islam, this obscurantist ideology, is all flowing from there once again. The victory of the Taliban, the perception of victory of the Taliban over the United States, over the Soviet Union, and therefore political Islam can win against all powers of the world is that kind of messaging. And it is encouraging a lot of elements in the valley to think that they can go back turn the clock back on what happened on 5th of August 2019 and rest of the period of the last 30 years. So target the softest targets and the most vulnerable targets in the valley. They're not going to come and target the army, right? They know what will happen. They will not target the Jammu and Kashmir police, except that if the police is on leave. If there are policemen on leave, if there are army personnel on leave, they become very soft targets. But they decided to go after the minorities to send home the message. Nothing has changed since the 90s. Everything is the same. The Indian government may turn the clock around. It may do something with the application of Article 370, etc. But the situation in the valley remains the same. This is the message being attempted.
So with that being said, a lot of, so I've been reporting in Kashmir for 3 years, and this is what I heard from some of the people, that there were intelligence inputs that the minorities were going to be targeted. And in 90s, if you compare, the army wasn't there that time. The army walked in after the exodus. So in spite of having the army and the security apparatus, and we have seen the counter-terrorism strategy that has been by the Indian Army post abrogation of Article 370. And we have seen also decline in the number of overground workers in the last few months. So how did this happen all of a sudden?
Well, a lot of people will classify it as failure, right? Failure of intelligence, failure of implementation. See, I'm not justifying anything, but I'm trying to explain this. To say, why can't Mumbai be cleansed of smugglers? Why can't, there be just no drugs anywhere in Punjab? Why can't we clean out Punjab? We can put the entire police on Punjab and clean out Punjab completely as far as drugs are concerned. That's not possible. You see, achieving 100% or making it zero, making some phenomenon zero, is something in the mind. I mean, you can think about it, but it's not easy to achieve it on ground. And I explained to you in my initial intervention itself that there are vulnerabilities of this population, of the minority population. They are living in isolated areas. They do travel out. They do travel on the roads of J&K itself. For example, the very famous chemist who was shot down. After all, he stayed there and he used to live in that area itself. Someone should have taken ownership of his security itself, right? But no one came forward to do it. I mean, the moment threats were there, then in Kashmir, what also very often happens is a cry wolf kind of a phenomenon, where you get thousands of intelligence inputs every other day. I can remind you in a lighter note, I can tell you that when I used to handle the Amarnath Yatra, every day I received inputs to say today 1,000 terrorists will attack the Amarnath Yatra. I mean, these are generic things. We put out this kind of an information. I'm talking about actionable intelligence. There was no actionable intelligence in this case to say that so-and-so person is going to get targeted. So there will be glitches, and this is what happens in an environment such as this. There will never be 100%. To say that the army is deployed on the line of control and there will be zero infiltration is a fallacy. Who can guarantee you zero infiltration? I will never guarantee zero infiltration. But all the technology of the world, the makeup of the LOC is such that someone will get past you as long as I can maximize my achievements. 80%, 90% is really good. Same here. Now, efforts have redoubled because they've probably recalibrated their whole strategy, and a lot of arrests have taken place. Lots of questioning is taking place, and that is important. This messaging must go across that people can't get away with this kind of a thing. But the best security, to my mind, the best security is provided by the people themselves. The moment the majority community takes ownership of the security of the minority, and it's a very important thing. This is an important message which the majority community must send out. Kashmir's traditional solidarity between the minority and the majority, let alone what happened in 1990, it needs to be projected. I know a lot of things have changed in Kashmir, but every effort is being made to bring back the good days in Kashmir also. So it's very important that the majority community takes ownership and provides that kind of security to the minorities.
Yeah. So, and especially, I want to talk a little bit about not the minority community as such. Also, there's this angle that recently came out of who are non-resident workers that's working in Kashmir, especially with the street hawker who was shot dead. And this conspiracy has come out about Kashmir Fight blog written by some jihadi who has been talking about getting a war on non-local workers. But Kashmir agriculture and construction industry kind of depend on the skilled workers that comes from outside. Recently, the army shot dead Mukhtar, who was responsible for that. How safe are the non-resident workers as well, not just the minority in Kashmir who are residents there?
Terrorist crimes against non-resident workers have been quite frequent, have not taken place for quite some time now. This I can assure you. I remember workers working for the Border Roads Organization in different areas. There were labor camps that you have in the valley. Some of them got struck. Even at the height of militancy, early part of the millennium, they got struck. There were a number of workers killed in that. Once in a while, a strike against someone who's probably something like a street vendor or a hawker takes place. It doesn't achieve very much. It doesn't achieve very much when you have 1, 2, or 3 people being killed like this. Unfortunately, the intent of the terrorist always is to glamorize, it is to maximize and have an effect as far as the media is concerned. Then it causes panic. Their whole intention is panic, right? And they have managed to achieve that to some extent. But to the credit of the government, and the security forces, they are also doing a lot as far as reassurance is concerned. I experienced this during Chitasinghpura. I can assure you, I was there in South Kashmir at that time. 36 was the largest number of minorities ever targeted. 36 were killed that night. And there was a panic, and the Sikh community wanted to leave Kashmir immediately. And I can tell you that the leadership was there, the military leadership was there. We all were there with them at that time, speaking to them. It would be seen to be a great loss for the country. It would be a great loss for the community. We couldn't afford to see the Sikhs leaving Kashmir at all. Just like we can't afford to see the Pandits, any member of the Hindu community leaving Kashmir because of the pressure imposed on them. I hope, and I'm very confident that the leadership in Kashmir is fully conscious of this, and they are working overtime to infuse confidence and ensure the overall security of these people.
Yeah. And this is something which might be really close to your heart because you deal with young adults. We have seen basically all these 3 terrorists who have been eliminated, especially our young boys. What are we doing wrong to make sure this young boy do not pick up arms again? Actually, post abrogation of Article 370.
It's not as if post abrogation of Article 370 everything changed and things became peaceful and stable. Politically, yes, it stabilized to a great extent. In fact, actually, political activity came down, which is not a very nice thing to happen. It will pick up subsequently. What did happen is that the street turbulence almost vanished completely. It's not because of any other reason, because also because of the overground workers having been targeted, the financial circuits having been targeted, the media to some extent also having been pressurized because there was a lot of anti-national stuff being put out on the Kashmiri mainstream media. With a combination of all this, the messaging was very clear. The separatists were separated from each other and they were put away for some time. The 4G came down, the overall the internet, mobile internet activity came down because of that. Social media took a backseat. So it's because of that a lot of things stabilized, right? And by things have been restored, and we find that there is general stability. But in this general stability, you will find efforts from the other side of the line of control to generate traction for the times gone by, to make the presence of terrorists, the presence of separatists relevant once again. There is a ceasefire on the line of control, but notwithstanding that, inside there is activity which is still going on. So the young people are being, I've seen a lot of engagement of young people going on by the army, by different organizations, the government itself. This is a whole of government approach. Everyone has to put his hands to it and push. The more we do, even less it will be. The maximum that we can do to make an outreach to the younger people, appeal to their better sense. We need to do a lot of this through de-radicalization, counter-radicalization. We also need to do a lot of this through the clergy, agreeable clergy who comes on board with the government and sends out the right messaging. It's only 2 years since Article 370 has been really abrogated. I still think, and in those 2 years, much of the time has gone in COVID, also in COVID management. So actually, the kind of focus which was needed may not really have happened. I think we need to give ourselves more time. As political activity picks up a little more, mainstream political activity picks up a little more, as politicians go out into the field and reach out to people, you may find things may start improving. But the most important aspect is the national outreach to and the ability to get the young people to be able to talk their minds. One of my ways of attempting to resolve this as a corps commander always was how to allow the man to speak his mind. Because you see, when you got venom inside your heart, then that venom is always going to keep boiling. How to get it out? I used to try and give an opportunity in clusters to people from the universities, etc., to come and speak to me. And I gave them the liberty to abuse or say whatever they want. And at the end of it, but they got a dose from me. They got a dose on nationalism from me. They got a dose on patriotism from me. They got a dose on the whole concept of understanding where political Islam is taking them. All that I took the liberty to speak to them. We need much more of that talking. We need much more of that engagement. While all the good work of development is going on, while all the good work of stabilization of the security environment is going on, the long-term solution to this lies ultimately in changing the mind of the younger people. And that can't happen just sitting back. It has to happen through very, very active engagement, intellectually engaged, intellectually very vibrant engagement.
And I think so the dose of nationalism is actually working when we see people actually standing up and singing the national anthem in the university, which is something which is very different. So I want to, the last time actually I spoke to you was when the ceasefire agreement was reiterated, and we've seen over the course of time, infiltration has slightly reduced, if not completely. There has been infiltration, but slightly reduced. A lot of people have been saying the number of terrorists who have been, we've seen the rise of number of people joining terrorists is mostly in-house. It's not the foreign fighters, but it's in-house. And especially with groups like TRF, which recently has been more than the JEM. We also seen the Islamic State Hind province also joining in hands. One of the killings was taking place. And recently Al-Qaeda, the Indian subcontinent, also released a video which has the Kashmir message to it. So how is this terror downplay going in Kashmir actually? And are we seeing more globalized version of jihad coming to Kashmir?
You see, all this activity which is being reported from Kashmir is essentially an attempt to remain relevant. They all know that they have been marginalized to a great extent. The networks have been marginalized to such a huge extent that revival is going to become very, very difficult for all this. But not that it has come to an end, we need to continue doing this, right? But much of this at the same time is also being done to obfuscate. You see, what is TRF? TRF is nothing but an umbrella organization, a shadow kind of a name given to a group of terrorists who owe allegiance to different organizations. And the name is not even Islamic sounding, right? It's not one of those Lashkars and Jaishs and things like that. It's typically very English sounding, that resistance front, trying to project as if this is a revolutionary movement that taking place in Kashmir, right? Second, to escape focus and attention from organizations like the FATF, which are targeting Pakistan at most times in the last 5-6 years, right? So it's primarily for this purpose. The Islamic State has no traction. at all in Kashmir. I can assure you this. The name of the Islamic State is used from time to time to mislead. You see, if the intelligence agencies are doing their work well, the other side will also work overtime to mislead the intelligence agencies. And these are the ways of misleading. Putting up an Islamic flag in some place and you find the intelligence agencies all getting focused on that. The Indian media suddenly going berserk at night programs. Everyone is discussing the Islamic State's entry into Kashmir. All this is to mislead. There is no traction of the Islamic State in Kashmir anywhere. And I feel very strongly that the Indian security forces have got hold of the situation extremely well. There will be minor glitches from time to time. There will be blips which will take place, like it's happened just now. Don't relate this operation in Rajouri, in Surankot, with anything to do with the situation in Kashmir, in the valley. This has happened far away. It's happened on the Mughal road towards Rajouri and Poonch, and it's happened deep inside the jungle area. It's very, very difficult doing a search and destroy mission in a jungle area, right? It's a question of who sees the other person first. And in this case, the terrorists were static, the army was moving, and therefore they saw the army first and fired. And that's how you had casualties. I am very certain that in a matter of a day or two, they will have another engagement in which all the 5 terrorists will be killed. Lives of terrorists don't last very long.
So last question before I let you go. So we have seen very disturbing visuals when most minority establishment in Srinagar was asked to shut the shop by 7 p.m. And a lot of people have even packed their bags and were waiting. What can we do to stop another exodus? And if not in another exodus, the minorities being targeted again?
It's important. We cannot trivialize this. It's very important. People like me may come on media and say that, no, it won't happen again and things like that. But this opinion of mine must be reinforced by the security forces by working overtime, ensuring that they have identified all those areas where the vulnerable segments of society live. They are patrolled, particularly the clusters, some of the isolated areas. It may be important to even temporarily put people together in clusters for some time and give them group security as such. Even their movement to their places of work, etc., must be monitored for some time. I know it's difficult and people love their freedom. No one likes to be monitored all the time, but then this is the price that you have to pay for security in a proxy conflict zone of this kind. But having said all this is the physical side of it. The most important aspect is the strong message which must go from the majority community. I'm so happy to see Junaid Mattu, the mayor of Srinagar, or people like, I think there's some other political leaders who have spoken about this and about the responsibility of the majority community. Sajjad Loan has spoken about it also. So it's important. More leaders must come. Why leaders? There are so many retired bureaucrats. There are so many retired policemen, very, very competent ex-DG police and things like that. They must all speak up vociferously. They must all appear in the media and come and appeal and tell them, people from their own community, that this is what is required. Kashmir is known for its tolerance and its secular nature, and this is the time to stand up and be counted.
With that note, sir, thank you so much, sir, for taking your time. That's a very strong message we're taking of trying to unite to fight this proxy war. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you so much for the work that you do, because it inspires us a lot to see changing images in Kashmir when we see young people standing up and singing the national anthem, sir.
Thank you. I hope the next time you and I interact, things will be better. I predict they will be better.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind.